Before we get started, I want to thank you for listening to Not Suitable for Work. If you haven't, take a quick second to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. Welcome to Not Suitable for Work. I'm your host, Peter C. Diamond. You think your office is nuts? Wait until you hear some of these stories.
It's a story I tell people as a cautionary tale of what not to do in a pressure-filled situation.
And there's nothing like making a joke and looking at a room full of people who, are just stone-faced, and they know that you blew it.
What about our professional dynamic has given you a license to act in this way?
We're driving, and it's taking a while, and I realize I don't think I'm going to be making it back to my hotel.
With each podcast, I interview folks who have a humorous work story to share. Along the way, I'll offer advice to help you make sense of your own office nonsense. Don't worry, no careers were harmed in making Not Suitable for Work. Names and places may have been changed to protect the not so innocent. Without further ado, let's get this show on the road. Being invited to an exclusive corporate soiree after years of toiling away in the daily grind should be the pinnacle of one's career. Or is it? My guest is Amy Kleckner, marketing consultant extraordinaire. Amy's story happens to include yours truly when we worked together 10 years ago. This takes place at a time in our careers where we were finally given the chance to rub elbows with the C-suite in their natural habitat. For me, this is a big deal. I consider myself a striver, an overachiever who grew up in a middle-class family with no exposure to corporate chieftains, let alone being invited to an intimate dinner and being seated at the C-suite table. I worked hard and logged the hours to get there. I should have been on top of the world. Instead, I ended up rethinking my entire career. But I don't want to get ahead of myself, as this is Amy's story to tell, but I do provide some color commentary.
Basically, my story today is really about life at the top, the peek behind the curtain of your leaders' private lives. And full disclosure, just for your listening audience, you were actually at this event, so our recollections might differ slightly, but the two of us actually went together because we were the only two not married at the time, and it was an event where you brought your spouses. So
I think we're still the only two that are not married.
It's in that group, my, how things don't change. So anyway, we were invited to a dinner at the home of one of the executives of our agency in honor of the retirement of our chief operating officer. And for those of you who come from an agency world or come from companies where people really tend to be there a long time, that's certainly the case here. This man had been at the agency for something like 30 years. So people, you go to different events. Sometimes you meet their spouses, sometimes you don't. But this was the first event that I was invited to that was like a big deal. What
did this invitation mean to you?
It meant that I had finally reached the point in my career where I was one of them, in the proverbial us versus them relationships at work. I wasn't anymore just, another senior leader. I was a senior leader that was, I guess, in the in crowd is kind of how I felt about it at the time. I was thrilled to be invited. Granted, I think part of my invitation hinged on the fact that I had to write a speech for one of the EVPs, but that's okay.
But it was a big deal.
Yes.
And I guess for me, it was also one of those things that kind of like people know my name.
Exactly.
Right? So
exactly.
Senior people who are really sitting at kind of like the C-suite for a global agency, which has, 7,000 people or whatever it is.
Right.
All of a sudden you're there and people know your name and you're invited to a very exclusive event.
Yes. And I think especially because it was so exclusive. It was international leadership as well. The CEO was there. The person whose house it was very high up in the chain of command. So it was just an acknowledgement of you're one of us and you count and this is something to be, you should be a part of because we value your leadership and your relationship to this man retiring. So.
And it's also interesting, and then you talked about like being there with spouses. By and large, most events are
Spouse free,
like,
especially in advertising.
It's almost like the agency, at least as I recall it and think about it, was very much like everything was very much for, kind of coworkers.
Exactly.
And very little was done with spouses.
Right.
Unless
It wasn't that kind of a culture.
So
it had been, I think, in the past they would do family days, but most of that had gone away. So you don't interact, you don't meet people's spouses. They're just not the kinds of events that support that.
So you would go with,
building.
you'd
Right.
go with your other colleagues and go for the evening and
Right.
But all of a sudden this, I think for both of us, we're like, oh, holy crap. Like everyone else there had a spouse. And so I just remember you and I thinking, okay, we're going together. Like,
Exactly. I'm not walking into this place alone.
We're not going to walk in alone or separate. So yes. So there we are, kind of.
Right. And I don't know if this really matters to the story, but certainly most of the people there knew each other's spouses. I mean, they were at that level where I don't know how much they socialized together, but it wasn't like us walking in and not knowing anybody's spouse. Like they seemed to sort of have done this before. And so finally we're at that place where, hey, we're part of the team too.
Because they probably have gone to some of these other kind of big going away events.
They've gone to each other's kids' weddings or, whatever the case might be with the Muckety Mucks. But yes, they knew each other. But so we're pretty much babes in the wood. And there were a couple of us that were in that situation that I think we were all at that, I don't know, senior vice president level, EVP level that, because we've been on the account that he came from, we were, invited. So not a huge gathering, but
I don't maybe like 50 to 70 people,
maybe.
including spouses. So
Right.
really, it was only probably 25 employees.
Right. So again,
and then
exclusive invitation.
Gilded in gold.
Pretty much. And so here's the other part about it. I'm a little bit of a voyeur as well. I was really excited to go just to see this guy's house. So, doesn't matter if it's Chicago, New York, whatever. Every city sort of has that street that's a really nice address, and it's going to be a beautiful building. And so here he is across from Lake Michigan and views of the parks. I was excited to see it.
Of course.
So we go, and it's also one of those apartments that when the doorman lets you into the elevator opens into their apartment, which I'm just like, it's like a TV sitcom.
I ain't never seen nothing like this before.
Exactly. Like, this is fancy. So, right. I mean, it's a little bit humbling. So you go in and it opens right up to it. And, the interesting thing here is, sort of trying to, I guess in retrospect, I would say I probably would have tempered my expectations. So you walk in, and I guess we could call the decor bold. Is bold a fair word?
Well, I think all I remember is it was kind of there was a long
There's like a long hallway. I want to say it was red or raspberry or it was a bold color.
And all I remember was just like it was also filled with art.
Lots of art,
right?
But art. I'm not going to say bad art because I don't know that for a fact. Expensive art, but certainly not my taste. And the placement of it, I thought was odd. Like, I don't know if you had a decorator do this for you, but I just felt like I was going to knock into things. Like, it was sort of bold, obtrusive art as well. So, right, so you go in. And then the interesting thing is you couldn't really tell how the place was decorated because they had set it up for this dinner party, almost like at a wedding when it's like, okay, we're going to move all the tables off the dance floor now. But all the tables were on the dance floor. They'd moved out their living room furniture and whatever.
Yeah, we still couldn't figure out like where all the furniture went. Like It went somewhere.
Exactly.
And we're like, where did all of this
I know, yeah,
go?
the apartment went way far back, so maybe they had
there was a second apartment that we don't know about. But that was the other weird thing. We're like, there's like, where's their living like furniture, like living furniture or dining furniture?
And then
all
it made
gone.
sort of the socializing awkward because it's like a bank. At this point, it's a banquet hall, and it was a little bit odd for sure. And I know that we went together because it was safety in numbers, and I pretty much abandoned you immediately because I had to deal with printing out the speech for, said EVP. But, so, here's the thing. It's like, so you're finally kind of seeing like, how people, it's like seeing a monkey at the grocery store. It's just like, I don't know how to put these facts together to see people with their spouses and to see them on weekends and how they interact with each other. It's just an interesting sort of social studies project as well. And then there was the new person that was sort of the heir, and it seemed to be a little bit like he was standing in with his wife and a little bit of kind of like, like a kiss my ring kind of thing. Like now power is with me, and not in a nasty way, but I had just never navigated that kind of a social situation before.
So while you were off trying to figure out how to print the speech, I was stuck in there trying to talk to people that I kind of know, or their spouses that I don't know. And it was, to your point, it was really awkward because you're like, okay, hi, I'm so-and-so. And nobody really looked happy.
Right.
That was the oddest thing. Like all I remember is I thought, because we came, I think, a little fashionably late on purpose so that we definitely did not want to be like the first ones in. So I thought it would be kind of jovial, and I thought there would be a lot of energy and that people would be, guffawing and laughing. And that was not the case at all.
It was probably the most corporate thing I ever went to at this agency, and it wasn't, it shouldn't have been.
It shouldn't have been. At someone's house, you would have thought it would have been much more relaxed.
Okay, so everybody's kind of eating, kind of not eating, and then it's to honor this man. So they start to make some speeches, and some of them were very endearing, like the one I wrote, and some of them were
the one I wrote for somebody else.
The one I wrote for somebody else was the best speech of the night. But here's where it just starts to get weird and sort of, just general rule of thumb, like watch who your leaders are, watch who you admire, because they're these folks and they've grown together and they've grown this company and they've, done amazing international travel and worked on big brands. Like, these are not dumb people. These are smart, sophisticated, well-traveled people who sell to Fortune 500 CEOs on a daily basis. But they get up to make these speeches and they're all over the place. Very few of them are actually in honor of the man retiring. And really more about, them and what they've had to maneuver. And maybe that's sort of part of the game. But it just seemed like, here's your colleague that you've worked with for all these years, and do you know anything about him? Anything about him at all? And again, part of this could have been because spouses are in the room. There are a lot of stories that I grew up hearing that were not repeated at this particular retirement dinner, probably because of the mixed company of the room. But this guy was one of sort of the, they couldn't even put the stories on something like a Mad Men because they were just so outlandish. But this is, guys that were advertising in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and it was just a crazy time, and they had crazy stories. And so the fact that, you grow up with all this like fun information, and then when it comes time to sort of do the roast and the retirement party, it's like, oh my God, are you going to tell this story about how you were delayed in Singapore that time? I mean, it's just, come on. It just didn't seem very genuine or authentic or anything. So here's sort of the pinnacle of the evening. And this is, sometimes I just tell this part of the story. So the CEO gets up and he's going to present the gifts. And so he presents the agency gift. And part of the agency gift, which they opened, is, the CEO, just to paint the picture, he had been a car guy. That might mean something to some of you out there. But I always considered him sort of mild-mannered. He was not a Burnett lifer. He was probably, at that point, had only been there maybe 6 years, which in the grand scheme of the agency is not a long time. Coming in from the outside, but I thought he was mild-mannered, sort of, a country club kind of guy. So again, my eyes are completely open by the end of this evening. So he presents the agency gift, and one of the gifts is 2 round-trip tickets to Hawaii for him and his wife, all expenses paid, beautiful. She's thrilled, first class, terrific. And then the second gift is from him personally. And he starts to recount the story of the time he told this person retiring, what he liked to do for fun, like what his hobby was. And the person retiring apparently said, oh, that's really fascinating or really interesting. But the person retiring is a guy, he's a golf guy. Let's just put it out there. He golfs. So he tells this story, and I can't tell the whole story right now, but he presents a box to be opened, and
and it's a black box.
It's a black
box. So it's like it's a black box that is maybe
a little bit larger than jewelry. So maybe like the size of a necklace box.
So, I'm thinking like it's like a gold crest or like the gold watch or, some kind of nice heirloom type thing that you would put on display. And
so he presents it to him, and he said, some of you may not know, but I don't know if he said I'm a trophy hunter or I'm a big game hunter or something. And so, I have a very special gift. So he presents this box, doesn't say anything. You open the box, and you were actually at that table.
So I'm at the table, and I'm kind of, but how I'm sitting, I have to like crane my neck around to see what was in the box and how it was like presented. I did not have a clear view. So I'm like and I'm still in between these two big guys, but I'm like craning, kind of encroaching on the one because I wanted to see what's in this box.
Right. So I'm like, oh, so you're a big game hunter. Are you going to take him on safari? I don't know what it is. And this person and his wife open the box, and they have no idea what it is. But I guess, I hope you don't get an onslaught of people that I'm going to miscategorize. I don't know, again, if he was a big game hunter or a trophy hunter. I don't know what the difference is, so I apologize to all the hunters out there. But basically, the custom is when you give somebody a gift of something that you've shot, and if that something that you've shot is, say, a black bear, you give the tongue. So they open this box, and they don't know what it is. And all of us at the other tables are like, what's going on? And did he just say he shot a bear? And then they have to pass this box throughout the entire room. And it's, I guess, a big deal if you're a big hunter. So the CEO is standing up there and just sort of reveling in the room, like being like, oh, but we're not like, oh, that's great. We're like, oh my God, that is disgusting. Who are you? You shot a bear? So that's how you present, hey, kids out there, that's how you officially present something that you shot. I don't even know what to make of it. And so by this time, because the speeches have gone long and it's boring and the spouses, my table at this point, our only outlet here was alcohol, so we'd have a few. And so we kind of got loud with like, oh my God, what is that? But again, for advertising, people were pretty silent. It was just the oddest thing I've ever seen. And here you go. This guy's a golfer. He probably said, oh, bears, that's interesting, and left it. But it signaled to the CEO that he was somehow interested in it. So here's my great passion that I'm going to share with you on your retirement.
And the what was really odd too is when the box was open.
But when the box being passed around a dinner party.
It took a while to register that this was a tongue. Like, I think there was like a little bit of like, what is this? Like, it wasn't like, oh yeah, it was.
And then no one will say it out loud because they don't want to ruin the surprise.
No,
but it's like, no one's going to figure that out, what that is.
No.
And so like, the box comes around, I'm just like,
yeah, I don't want to touch it. Like, thankfully, I think I just like had my hands to my side and just like let it pass along. Because I was not interested, but it was also like, it's like you don't even know what to do. Like, all of the air was sucked out of the room. And
I just remember like I got really hot. I'm like, is it really hot in here? Have I had too much to drink? Because I think everybody just sort of, like stopped breathing and didn't know how to handle it. It was just odd. So it was already not a boisterous room, and that kind of took any sort of.
And then there was just kind of the bag, the bear was just kind of yanked out of like a plastic bag or something.
Right. And I'm like, and I remember saying to my dining companion, if they pass this freaking thing around the room, I am out of here. I am sure it's, here's the thing. So the CEO gave it to him out of, I think, genuinely love and respect and admiration. I don't doubt that for a minute. but the whole thing was just so odd. It's not like they were hunting buddies. It's not as if the man had sort of expressed any interest ever in the great outdoors beyond a golf course. It was just such a disconnect from not only what we all did for a living and what business we were in, but also who this man is that you're honoring. Like, I don't know, like stripping your own bear that you shot is, I don't know what to do with that information. But I will never, as long as I live, forget. There are two things I remember so clearly from that night. One is walking in and, sort of like the blood-colored walls, which was odd. And then this box being passed around of a bear tongue. It was just, right. And now I've got a dead bear in this blood-covered walls. And I'm just like, don't know what to do with myself.
Well, and I remember sitting there listening to all this, almost like going into like having a bit of an out-of-body experience, because all I thought is, I don't belong here. Like,
right?
This
right?
is...
And we were so excited to go, and I remember sitting at the table and like, is this what I have to look forward to at the end of my however many years? Just people that I've done so much for this company, and it's like people can't even be their authentic selves around me, or they don't know me authentically. Like, that's how I felt, and I'd never, ever felt that at that company among those people. And it was interesting because we have only talked about this very recently. We were both sitting at different tables like, check, please.
Yeah.
I just, again, nice people, nothing like that. It just seemed just so different from who I thought they were and who I thought I was and what I wanted out of this company ultimately, that I'm like, okay, so again, just know your leaders and be really careful who you admire and who you kind of set up on a pedestal, because they'll do something like pass out a bear tongue at your retirement party. Like, what? I do have an interesting postscript to this story. And it's disgusting. No, it's not that bad. It is. So we must have been flying to New York or somewhere for yet another in the, I don't know, chain of events, because I was at the airport with, the COO and his wife and a couple other people, senior people on our account, and they were talking about it. And his wife, who is a very, very religious woman, I guess they'd taken this bear in, and I say she's religious because she couldn't actually repeat the story, and they have a dog, and the dog was so enamored with this bear skin that before they could get the dog off the bear and the dog had a true love connection. Let's just put it that way. So, but you'll always have that bear tongue in the box,
and
right?
yes, you will. So, any other like thoughts or lessons from this story and from this experience?
Any additional ones? No, here's the thing that I will say is that it made me really appreciate the people that were in what I would consider sort of our core colleague group. It made me appreciate those relationships and those friendships, to at least be able to say sort of under our breath at the table or at work the following Monday, like, that was weird, right? We're all in agreement that was just strange. And then there is definitely this sort of demarcation between like the old guard and us who were the new guard and trying to bring us together. And maybe we can bridge that. Maybe we'll turn exactly into those people 30 years from now. I don't know. But I think the lesson is that I was very proud to sort of work with the people that I worked with and really know them in a way that it didn't seem like these people that had worked together and traveled together for years knew each other, or I don't know, maybe they were putting on a show. I don't know. It just seemed that for as much camaraderie as they had in the office, and they all traveled together and all that kind of stuff, I don't know how well they knew each other outside of the office. And again, I'm not even blaming this on the dead bear that was also there. It felt really disconnected from my reality. And then the other thing is, I just thought it was strange to me that, I think there's definitely a type in creative businesses. And it also struck me how different the spouses were from what I consider sort of the type. And opposites attract, and we can put any other cliche we want into that. But it just seemed like the spouses didn't really know their work lives and their work people and sort of what they talked about, you know? So, I mean, for me, you know, talking with the wives, like, well, I don't have kids. So, like, you know, another one of our coworkers had 3 kids, and so she could talk about that. I'm like, I don't have kids. Do we talk about my dogs? Do we talk about my hobbies? You know, it's like they just didn't seem to be steeped in the business. And I'm like, you know, again, I'm not going to make comments on anybody's marriage, but when you kind of think of partnerships, it just, I don't know, it just felt really surface to me. Like the whole evening just felt really surface. And again, these are smart, well-traveled, fun, entertaining people, and the evening was anything but that. And then, you know, the other lesson that I would just give to everybody, if you want a good caterer, give me a call, because I think that if you'd been a little bit more on it with passing out of the drinks and had really good food, maybe that could have bridged some gaps.
Amy Kleckner, thank you for being on Not Suitable for Work.
Thanks for having me.
As this evening wore on, I remember thinking, I have tremendous respect for the people in this room, but I don't fit in. These aren't my peeps. This exclusive soiree brought into focus that I'm not motivated by status or being part of an elite group that attends these types of events. I thought I was, but I'm not. I was striving for something I should want versus what I really want. While I was thinking and planning for my next act, this evening put an exclamation point on the urgency to act swiftly. And I did. 2 years later, I left advertising and started my own executive and leadership coaching practice. But back to the bear for a moment. Is there any chance that could be regifted, or does it end up forever in the back of a closet? If you want more Not Suitable for Work or have a work story to share, be sure to follow us on Facebook at Not Suitable for Work. You can find our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts. If you have a question you want answered on a future episode, call us at 872-256-0827. I'm Peter C. Diamond. You can follow me on Twitter at Peter C. Diamond. Not Suitable for Work is produced by Matt Cunningham at Truthful Enthusiasm. Get your story online with truthfulenthusiasm.com. Until next time.